Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Betty Chen. Global economic growth is estimated at 3.1% for 2024 and 3.2% for 2025, marking a 0.2 percentage point increase from the October 2023 World Economic Outlook projections. Similarly, Taiwan's Directorate General of Budget, Accounting and Statistics has raised its economic growth forecast for this year from 3.35% to 3.43%. How can we interpret the economic trend for 2024, and what factors are expected to impact Asia's economy? Joining us today are Wang Jiann-chyuan, Chung-Hua Institution for Economic Research Vice President, and Peter Kurz, Quantum International Corp Chief Strategy Officer. A warm welcome to both of you on the show. The 2024 Global Economic Outlook seems more positive than anticipated, so let's start with today's conversation. Given the factors and also the background that I just showed you, do you think what's the main reason for this kind of optimism, and do you both agree with the forecasts? Vice President Wang.
First up? Oh, okay. I think the reason for I would say just yes, part of sort of agree and sort of disagree.
Okay.
First of all, I will just address the agree part, because I think the reason for the upward adjustment is because the U.S. economy is upgrade adjustment, because U.S. economy doesn't hurt by the high inflation, high interest rate, because the government actually issue a lot of subsidies during the COVID-19 eras. So that's bring a lot of X saving, and this result in the growth momentum for domestic consumption. The second one is because of the open of the COVID-19 shutdown, right? So that caused the booming of the service industry. So the labor market is strong and also resilience. So this is the upward adjustment for the U.S. economy. Second one is that even though the China's economy is not doing quite well, because of the asset bubble and its local government debt or something like that, but still managed to get about 4.7%. And also this year, a lot of people expect the U.S. Government will just, the Federal Reserve will lower the interest, will create growth momentum. So this is more beneficial factors for global economy. But some of the sort of disagrees because according to the IHS market analysis, most of the major countries' economic performance actually this year's worse than last year. See, the U.S. government last year is probably 2.5%. This year probably 1.7%, and India is 6.5% last year. This year is about 6.2%, and also many China's last year is about forecast as 4.2%. This year is only 4.7%. So the global overall economic environment is not as good as it thought. So I think probably this is a bad reason. Second one is that because interest rate have some lag effect, because the federal fund rate is already 5%, and then the private sector probably reach 7%. Or even 8% or something like that. Some of the car loan, student loan, and also a lot of credit card loan or something like that. Probably that will have lag effect for the U.S. economy. And third one is that China's probably even though they have 4.7% economic forecast, but because they need to have new growth models, because in all times they rely on the asset market-driven economy. They need to find the new growth models. So it takes longer time for structural adjustment. I think we need to wait and see what's going on in China's economy.
So thank you, Vice President Wang. You just gave us the reason for why you agree and both disagree with the forecast. What about you, Peter? What's your take on this?
Well, I think that the world economy is kind of in a, Goldilocks scenario here, because we've had some of the sort of growth pressures taking off the economy, obviously because of COVID. It's delayed some of that demand, and it's beginning to sort of drip feed into the economy now. Originally in the service sector, which of course was almost shut down during the COVID period, and it's come back quite strong. But we're also beginning to see some demand coming out in the goods sector. But of course, a lot of that still is going to be focused on the electronics industry, and of course, a lot of that is also based on some of the hype, but I think it's reality too behind the AI trend coming through too. The other point I'd make from a more of a monetary standpoint is that actually, despite the rise in interest rates that we've seen throughout last year, throughout 2022 and into last year, we've actually seen money supply growth globally hit a bottom in October of 2022 and begin rising throughout 2023, which explains why we've had this sort of dichotomy of a, sort of dire concerns about the economy and yet a very strong stock market as well. And so we've seen, to some extent also, even in the United States, despite the high interest rates there, the Fed is playing a sort of subtle game of raising interest rates, lowering money supply growth overall, but bank reserves have actually been increasing. And so the central bank has a number of different tools they can use, some are rather too esoteric to discuss here, but have been able to create the appearance of having tight monetary policy, but in actual fact, providing a lot of liquidity to the economy. And the other point I would make is I actually think that inflation is becoming a very positive factor, not because it's coming down, but because it's not coming down to the 2% level, which I think would be actually negative because we still have very high debt levels, in part because of the COVID subsidies, in part because they were pretty high to begin with. And if you have those levels, it's going to be a depressing factor for the economy. But if you allow a little bit of inflation to inflate the GDP numbers versus that fixed debt number, it actually begins to resolve that excessive debt levels in the economy as well. So to a large extent, too, we're kind of de-risking the global economy here.
So talking about de-risking, I think now the world has been watching the development of China's economy, which is now slowing down. So regarding China's economic landscape, Taiwanese investment in China has reached an all-time low. Data from the Mainland Affairs Council indicate a significant decrease in the proportion of Taiwanese investments in China, falling from 83.8% in 2010 to just 11.4% in 2023. Consistent annual declines in the amount of investment culminated in a historic low that year. And this downward trend mirrors a broader decrease in foreign investment in China. So what can these patterns tell us the situation about China? And do you think that how the maybe slowdown of Chinese economy will impact the global economy? Maybe we start with Peter.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Betty. So obviously, there's been some pushback to China more broadly because of its somewhat more aggressive regional geopolitical activity, and in part because of the trade tensions between the U.S. and China, such that the U.S. initially tried to, again, they use the word de-risk their exposure to China, even to the point where they are willing, and this has been stated by Rahm Emanuel, the U.S. ambassador to Japan, willing to accept a premium on products in order to assure a stability of supply. And since the Ukrainian invasion by Russia, which where China, of course, supported the Russians, Europe has sort of jumped on that same bandwagon as well. And so globally, a lot of countries are now basically telling their suppliers, we don't want any, at least new products. Maybe existing supply chains can continue, but any sort of new products must be supplied from third-party countries, in other words, Southeast Asia, India, or even in their home countries. And so this has forced Taiwanese companies to at least reduce or stop their investments in China and increase elsewhere. On top of that, China has been unable to create secondary sources of demand in their economy. The consumption proved to be very disappointing. And of course, the country can't continue the extent of, as Vice President mentioned earlier, their extent of borrowing and investing in infrastructure that much further. So they're kind of at a standstill at this point.
So talking about the situation now, we understand that a lot of Taiwanese companies are pulling away their investment from China and moving to Southeast Asia or South Asia. What's your take on this kind of strategy? Do you think that this will be a sustainable one in the long term?
I think because the reason why Taiwan's reduced the China bonds investment is because of simple reasons. The first reason is because government engineers so-called New Southbound policy to diversify the too much dependence on China's investment. Second one is because U.S.-China trade war, so relocation of the supply chain. Third one is that because of China's market is shrinking because it's a bubble. And also, Xi Jinping's very high pressure control also scary a lot of foreign investment away. And finally, is that we just ask the firms to return to home, to Taiwan. Okay, this is the 5 reasons. But if it's sustainable, because in short term, I think yes. In short term or mid term, I think yes, because Taiwan is invest in Asian countries, so bring along, create some exports for key components, for raw materials, ship back to Asian countries, also create a lot of trade surplus. So this is good things, and I think the reduce the dependence on China market, I think is very nice things. But because actually Asian countries is because they have inefficient infrastructures, and also they have a lack of skilled laborers, and also ASEAN country actually is the backyard of China, and most of the countries have number 1 or number 2 trading partner to China. I think Taiwanese government is hard to exert influence on the country. So I think the marginal impact probably is lower. As far as I'm concerned, from the U.S. perspective, I think the India or Mexico probably is a long-term strategic partners for states. And so I think the India and also Mexico is market size, and also they are not afraid of China. And the problem is that it's a good market if we can copy China's model into India or into Mexico, but with the help of the U.S. government in law protection or some special economic zone, because Taiwanese government had to dialogue with Indian government, but with the help of the states, I think we have alternative market, and also it's a long-term destination for India. Even though India is that environment is not too good so far, infrastructure, language problems, some corruption, and other things. But takes time, it's improving.
That's a very interesting point of view, because for a lot of Taiwanese companies, maybe they're not so familiar with the Indian and Mexican market. Peter, what's your view on this? How can Taiwanese companies tap into these, you can say, uncharted territories?
Well, they're going to need to have sort of flagship investments in these markets to really create the environment for them to then plug into as the smaller, medium-sized companies begin to fill up that gap. But a number of companies have expressed to me their frustrations in operating in these markets, India in particular, again, as Vice President Wang mentioned, because of the bureaucracy there, the inability to actually get approvals through or to actually execute on those approvals, getting the land available. And so there's whole sort of backup of a lot of projects that have been approved that haven't come to fore yet. Mexico perhaps slightly better, but again, it's very far afield. It's a different language and culture. And Southeast Asia has problems too, again, echoing some of Vice President Wang's comments. Beyond the sort of skilled labor and language issue, the fact that it's very disaggregated. And so whereas in China you had one currency, one customs union, obviously one culture and one language, you have to be shipping your products upstream and downstream among different countries, going through customs and so on and so forth. And it's proven to be rather inefficient, and thus a high cost and low margin locus for production for the Taiwanese companies. So some of them are actually moving still back into Taiwan. Obviously, some are moving to some of the more developed markets. But in any case, it's creating this sort of diaspora of production capacity around the world, which isn't necessarily bad for the Taiwanese in the long run, because they are now controlling this highly complex network of production bases that make them even more essential component of the global supply chain, but it has in the short term squeezed margins. although, again, you wouldn't notice that from the performance in the stock market.
So now let's zoom in to take a look at the Taiwanese market. Taiwan's Directorate General of Budget, Accounting and Statistics reports that exports are the main engine behind Taiwan's economic growth this year. Rising exports have stimulated consumption, investment, and imports within a country. However, the IMF lowering its global trade volume growth forecast from 3.5% to 3.3% for this year suggests that the expansion of global trade is weaker than anticipated. So, Vice President Wang, what do you think of the strengths of Taiwanese exports, despite the global, maybe you can say, like the economy, global economy is not so good, but how can Taiwan maintain such good momentum for our exports?
First of all, I think the one of the advantage is because it's a low base period. Because last year we have minus 4% of export growth, but this year we just more optimistic think about projects, about 4%. This is a low base period. Second one is that just Peter just mentioned is that because AI driven, because AI bring along some of IC design, foundry, server, and also some packaging and testing or something like that. So it's like a AI fever or something. So create a lot of momentums. And also because Peter just mentioned about because we have every 4 years that computer changing. So laptop also the demand is also increasing. DRAM and also panel like a monitor has been hit low, bounce back. So this industry actually is doing quite well. And just they see the stock market is doing quite well as well. But this I'm calling that it's an unbalanced growth because some AI related industries is doing quite well. But other things like semiconductors, some electrical components, especially the mature process foundry actually start overcapacity and price cutting competition or something like that. And also another machinery is also not doing too good because they with three ways competition. First of all, high-end machinery going to Europe face the competition from the Italy and Germany, and also low-end go to like China. Actually, it's another fierce competition. And also see the Japan's yuan depreciation for about 30%. And they have a higher quality but same price. So face a lot of pressure for the machinery. So this is called the unbalanced growth. I mean, even the macroeconomic figures is doing quite well, but this is unbalanced growth in different industry. And also service industry is doing okay. So this is called the unbalanced growth.
What's your take on this, Peter? Maybe like which countries or what industries may, in your views, may be bullish or will be more promising in the coming year?
Well, again, you just can't get away from the AI fever that's sweeping the world.
It's everywhere, right?
It is,
that's right. Yes.
And you know, it's real. It's game changing. Will it lead to tears? I expect so because these cycles always do. We saw that with the internet, and we saw that with PCs initially as well, where there's a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of investment spending around them, but it's the actual absorption of that new technology into everyday products and so forth that tends to lag expectations, and I think that will happen here too. But for the time being, again, it is stimulating demand for obviously semiconductor chips. There's stimulating demand for modules, electronics modules that use these chips. That's sort of what they call accelerators that allow that perform specific functions that allow you to either do them faster and cheaper, or to actually bring them down to the what they call the edge, right, at the IoT level and consumer product level. And so I think these electronics products will continue to drive growth. But I really appreciate Vice President Wang's comment about the unbalanced growth. We are definitely seeing that. I've talked to a friend of mine in the financial industry as well. I asked about how the loan situation is going and the bad loan situation. Again, same comments. The bad companies are getting worse and the good companies are getting better. And this is not sustainable in the long run. So as I said, I think the party's going on strong right now. But I am concerned about how things progress, and I would also add that sort of rebound in monetary growth that we saw at the end of 2022 and throughout last year has begun to reverse now. And so in actual fact, we are seeing money supply tightening. At the same time, interest rate levels are remaining high, and so I would suggest that we should be somewhat cautious for maybe the second half of the year, or later on than that.
Definitely, we have to keep an eye on that, right? A study by financial advisory firm Quantum International Corp, QIC, focusing on 49 companies within the Taiwanese semiconductor supply chain, predicts significant growth. The forecast suggests the market value of Taiwan's semiconductor or semiconductor supply chain will jump from its current $24.9 billion to an impressive $257.7 billion US dollars by 2033, achieving a tenfold increase. So talking about this important growth, we understand that TSMC has been expanding its presence in the United States, and also the JASM, a new plant under TSMC, just opens in Kumamoto, Japan. So do you think that Taiwan is able to achieve, according to the forecast, tenfold growth in semiconductor? Maybe we start with Peter.
Right. So the tenfold growth, of course, is for that supply chain or that ecosystem surrounding TSMC, and not necessarily for the entire industry, because we don't think TSMC can necessarily grow that fast. But on the other hand, it hasn't been doing too badly, though, thus far. Yeah, it's exactly because Taiwan is now sort of, or the semiconductor industry is sort of growing a bit beyond the borders of Taiwan, which kind of makes sense because, you know, there's only so much of that capacity you can put on in one place, not to mention that Taiwan is a tectonically active island, so it doesn't make sense to do that, have that degree of concentration either. And yet, as we've seen, particularly not so much obviously in Kumamoto, but in Arizona, there have been some growing pains as the TSMC does expand internationally. And this is in part because you're going out of your comfort zone into a whole different environment there. This is why we believe at QIC that TSMC is now looking to build a more sort of mobile supply chain that using their same, service and component providers here in Taiwan and allowing them to move with them into international markets. And that's going to help grow that component of the economy here and those companies in particular. And yes, we're quite optimistic about that.
Also, during the opening ceremony of the subsidiary of TSMC in Japan, the founder, Morris Chang, also said that he's receiving requests from customers asking for not just tens of thousands of chips, but asking for like 10 fabs. And he thinks that the answer may be in between. What's your take on this? Do you think that this is such a fast-growing industry and Taiwan can fulfill this kind of demand? Or maybe there will be oversupply in the future?
Depends on, because from the AI is a more advanced process design, and because TSMC accounts for the 80% of the advanced chip foundry or something like that. And also because first of all, AI has three waves of revolution. The first wave is from one runner like Microsoft, like Apple, like NVIDIA. Let's just go ahead, because maybe over market value, then correction. And the second wave is more competitors going in, then just market just up again. And then the third wave is that AI probably that penetrate every line of business, like going to your left. It's the killer application for the business model, like go to the automatic cars, like biochemistry industry, go to the medical industry, going to the retail, going to the finance and the insurance industries.
Right.
So this is probably that revolution, and then that finish. So I think this is a lot of promising areas, but we need to worry about the AI bubble. Some people say that AI bubble is even bigger than the cyber bubble. And second one is that relocation of the globalization. But you need to have skilled laborers, and also the Peter just said like there be unions or something like that. But I think we may be able to conquer this problem in short run. But in the long run, we also need to worry about the bubble and also the U.S. government's attitude. Because Trump has been the front runner of the U.S. presidential election.
Right.
And he said that because Taiwan just take away just the U.S. manufacturer's job or something like that. And also, if the Trump got elected, because 70% of his Twitter's selling will be realized. Then see in 1980s the Toshiba, because they have U.S. government collect 100% anti-dumping taxes. And also they just start a framework, initiate a framework, DRAM framework with South Korea, just left alone the Japan. So I think they still have a lot of uncertainty. I think find out from the optimistic viewpoint, I think yes. But from some of our uncertain geopolitical influence, maybe still a lot of uncertainties.
So one quick final question for Peter. Now Taiwan maintains an edge in terms of the manufacturing for advanced chips or maybe AI-related chips. What's your prospect on Taiwan's future for semiconductor development? Do you think that we can still maintain the edge?
Yeah, well, again, I think the very fact that we are moving beyond the borders here is going to be very positive for the industry to maintain that leadership, to get closer to the end market, so that being in the U.S., being in Japan, and of course ultimately being in Germany as well, you can co-develop new products with your end customers and allow you to maintain that close relationship and that dominance in the industry. This maybe doesn't bode as well for on-the-ground jobs, on-the-ground investment here in Taiwan, but certainly for the industry leadership by Taiwanese companies, I think it will remain quite strong. On top of that too, and again, Vice President Wang to touch on this as well, getting those products in, getting that technology into a wider range of products that we use in everyday life, obviously smartphones, but of course EVs and other sort of daily products. Will create a lot of opportunities for Taiwan companies here on the ground too, particularly given, again, this sort of wanting to source from Taiwan or sourcing from outside China. This will allow a lot more manufacturing opportunities here in Taiwan too.
Thank you so much. If you like our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching our show today. Stay safe and see you next time.